In today's video, we are going to be looking at Is Wayland Ready Part 3. This is a video that I do every year now to see if Wayland is ready for the Linux desktop, comparing it against the features that some features that are left that are on the X11 session of these desktop environments, and just seeing what is left on, and then also looking at the last video that I did about Is Wayland Ready and seeing if those issues that I mentioned in that video are fixed. So the first problem that I had on the Wayland session in part 2, which was last year, was not being able to screen share on the Discord application. If you don't know, you weren't able to do this in the Wayland session. Every time that you tried to screen share with Discord in a Wayland session, like on KD Plasma or Gnome, and any Wayland session, it would only show the X Wayland windows as an option to share. It would not allow you to share your whole screen or select other Wayland applications that you had opened. Well, that is now been fixed. Around 11 months ago, this was added, and now it's available everywhere in the Discord application. We can show off an example right now. We go into General here, and we go Screen Share. And then we've got this selection, which is a little bit different. This one is a little bit newer. We can share the entire screen here or share a window. So if you do entire screen, make selection, it shows up with the portal system, which is what is used on the Wayland session for most things today when it comes to screen sharing in OBS or now in Discord. So I'm just going to select this one, and there we go. Now we're screen sharing on the Wayland session. Or if we want to, we can change it. So we stop screen sharing, share a window, and it's going to bring up the option of the portal again, but it's for selecting a particular window. So we got, Discover, or let's say, let's say Discover, for example. Now we're screen sharing the Discover application. So this issue has now been resolved. If you use the normal Discord client or you use any third-party Discord client as well, those all support screen sharing under Wayland with the portal system. Now, in the last video, the other issue that I had was about screen tearing, and the problem was that the screen tearing wasn't set up correctly because of some kernel things that needed to be added for the tearing to actually work in full screen games. So if you're playing, let's say, an FPS game, for example, and you want the game to tear, so you get the latest frame on the monitor as fast as possible, it actually wasn't working properly. But now that has been fixed. Screen tearing does indeed work properly now. I have enabled, let's say in KWin, for example, on KDE, you can enable the debug option for the compositor, and I can verify that the tearing does indeed show up when you launch a game. It does change it, and it enables it pretty much all the damn time if you have adaptive sync disabled. If you have VRR or adaptive sync enabled to automatic, it will sometimes just like choose between each one, either it be VRR or screen tearing. I don't really know exactly how that works properly, but screen tearing at the end of the day does indeed work on the Wayland session now. At least on KDE Plasma, it works. When it comes to other desktop environments that have a Wayland session, they don't support the screen tearing protocol yet. Like Gnome, for example, they have an open merge request for screen tearing, and it hasn't been merged yet, and it's been almost 2 years now. Not really 2 years, but a year and a couple of months it's been. And when it comes to the activity though on this merge request, it has been a lot. Last commits that were done were a month ago, 2 commits. So it's not like they aren't working on it. The developers are, as you can see, but as always when it comes to Gnome things, Gnome features that are being added in the Wayland session or any other Gnome features they want to add, these things do take a little bit longer than, let's say, KD Plasma or the Cosmic Desktop, for example. So at least for me, when it comes to screen tearing, it is indeed fixed. I can now use screen tearing if I want to in full screen games. It's going to tear as much as it can. That's what I want basically for playing like FPS games, for example. Now, the next one we are going to talk about that was in my other video from last year is about Wayland. Wayland isn't ready yet. In the video that I did before, I was talking about how you can be a tester and test it out, but it is actually more easier than ever to use Wayland today, since all the custom Proton runners like GE Proton and Gasiyu OS Proton do have environment variables now that you can use to enable the Wayland driver, and then applications like Heroic, for example, the Fugus launcher, and Bottle soon as well, the Wayland option is available that you can just enable, and then the application can use it. Now, again, Wayland is experimental. I guess if we show this off right now, we can show off some of the problems with Wayland that can occur. So, like the first problem that we're seeing here, when we try to load the Epic Games store, for example, this seems to be a problem with CEF, if I remember, the framework that's used in a lot of different game launchers, like Steam as well. When you try to run Wayland with these types of game stores, you can see here, it is a black screen. You're not able to see the contents on the application. Now, you can fix this with a launch option, I think it is, you can use, which is called process -- something. But the default behavior right now is that it is a black screen. You can't use it, and you need to use a particular option or like environment variable to get this working. So for right now, it's a black screen. And another issue that we can see here, when we enable a game into window mode, we can see that the title bar, or whatever you call it, is looking like a Windows 98 theme, basically. And this is because Wayland doesn't support either the protocol for grabbing the theme that your desktop is using, or server-side decorations. I don't think it's server-side decorations. I'm pretty sure it's the protocol that they don't support yet, and so it is defaulting to a Windows 98 theme. So this is another problem that can happen with Wayland. But it's not like it's a big issue because the Windows buttons still work properly, so not a huge problem. It just doesn't look nice. It doesn't look appealing. And I guess when it comes to some other things that happened last time that I remember, when you originally launched a game under Wayland, it would create a Wayland icon. This is no longer the case. It grabs the icon properly, and it does it a better job as well versus grabbing when it used to run under Wayland. When it used to run under Wayland, it used to try and grab the icon, but most of the time when it tried to grab the icon, it would look absolutely messed up depending on the game. And as we can see here under the Wine merge request for Wayland, there is still a couple of things that need to be added, like implement support for rotated displays, add support for server-side decorations. So this might solve the decorations at the top, unsure though. And there is many other things. There's around, it says open 13 open merge requests, which of course more will continue to open. I don't think this will ever stop. There's always going to be something new. But when it comes to the main things that are needed for Wayland, they're basically done, I would say. When it comes to how games spawn on monitors, they basically figured out a way, basically a system of ordering based on your resolution and refresh rate to figure out which is your main monitor, and then it will spawn on that monitor. So for me, I have a 1080p 144 Hz, but the thing is, I also have a second 1080p 144 Hz, so I don't know what magic they're doing to spawn the game on the right screen. I'm very unsure of how they figured that out, because I have two of the exact same monitor that is using the exact same cable, so I'm wondering how they're doing that, but that is now solved as well. And of course, most of the Wayland patches with the custom Proton runners are going through the Proton-EM runner. And this is what GE Proton and Gasiyu OS Proton fork from. So Proton-EM, EM stands for ETASH, which is the developer. Mathem Seti, if that's how I say him correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't say it correctly. So he does basically a lot of the Wayland stuff is basically what he focuses on. Sometimes he'll add other patches for game fixes and such, but the main issues are to do with Wayland. Some games do have problems. Some launchers don't work properly, and things like heavy flickering with Doom Eternal is something that I reported. I'll show a thing here. This is going to be an epilepsy warning, by the way. Epilepsy warning. If you have epilepsy, this might cause it. Get ready. I'm going to show it now. Close your eyes or something, or click off the video. So this is what the flickering looks like when you try to run Doom Eternal or other games that use the Vulkan API, graphics API, it's going to flicker. And basically, ETH did reply saying basically how it is breaking and how this could be solved. Personally, I do not understand what the hell he's saying, but he seems to know what he's talking about, so I will leave this link down below if you want to go and read it. But yeah, basically something is going wrong with how it's behaving with Wayland and the Vulkan surface, and so something is not working properly because of that, and so that is why the flickering occurs with Doom Eternal. So the next thing that I did talk about in the Wayland Ready video part 2 was about Nvidia not having really good drivers on the Wayland session. There were some important features that were missing that the AMD and Intel GPU drivers had in Mesa already, like VR, for example, with multi-monitors. So VR would work on Nvidia, but only with one monitor plugged in. As soon as you plugged in other monitors, VR would not work at all. So when it comes to today, is the Nvidia drivers good enough for the Wayland session? Yes, it is good enough. Is it as good as AMD? No, I would say it's really close now. Nvidia's like basically there, basically on par with AMD, I would say. There may be some little issues that are left, maybe some crashes that may occur with some desktops, maybe some just little bugs here and there that maybe Nvidia needs to fix, or the desktop environments need to fix. So like I said, Nvidia does now support VR with multi-monitors, and the other one was the Nvidia control panel didn't support, was it fan control, the overclocking stuff that they had, all of that stuff didn't work in the Wayland session on the Nvidia control panel application, and all of that is now working on the control panel in the Wayland session. So that's another thing that Nvidia has done to resolve that. Now, what is left with the Nvidia drivers? Well, I would say HDR is one. They don't support HDR fully that I know of on the extent that the AMD or Intel drivers do on Linux. So when you enable HDR and you try to play HDR with certain games, it requires an extra environment variable and then an extra package that you need to install to do a workaround so that it works properly. So I don't know if that's still relevant. I'm pretty sure the WSI environment variable that is needed to get HDR working on a game with under Wayland is still a thing, but you don't need that on AMD or Intel. So in the future, I'm guessing Nvidia is going to change that, where you won't need that, and HDR should just work under Wayland when that gets enabled by default, or at some point where you still need to force it, but it won't be as annoying on an Nvidia GPU for enabling HDR. So now we go into what is left with Wayland today. What do people want on their desktop that the X11 session has and Wayland does not have? Either because it has it and it's missing a lot of things that the X11 offered, and so things are kind of just like not going anywhere. And one of the features that people really do want is the session management. Now, this is already a feature in something like KD Plasma, for example. When you have the default setting and you reboot your computer with a bunch of applications opened, it does restore them. But the problem is it doesn't restore them where they were last positioned. Instead, what happens is they just spam a bunch of windows on the main monitor, and then that's where they all spawn on top of each each other. Unless it's an Wayland application, it will remember its location and it will respawn back where it was before. But if it's a Wayland application, it does not know the last position it was in, and so it just spawns on the main monitor basically. And so you just get these bunch of different windows spawning. So there is a protocol, which is the ADDEXT zones protocol for area limited window positioning and layering. Now, the problem with this is that there has been a lot of discussions over it, if it's a good implementation of this protocol. Now, personally, I don't understand the code wise of this, so my opinion is not really that great, but this is a issue, and I feel like the Wayland developers really need to figure this out, because it is something that people want and people actually need when it comes to developers creating applications. I think a lot of Wayland developers in here don't really know that there is, or they do know and they just don't care, that there is app developers that need this type of window positioning for their application to work properly. And without this, the application will just stay in Wayland, basically, working fine under Wayland. May have some problems under Wayland because of the translation, but for most cases, they're not going to enable Wayland support because of this not being merged and used in any type of desktop environment. Now again, I'm not a developer, so my opinion is basically null. I don't know what I'm talking about with this protocol, with this code, but it is a feature that people want and people need, and it needs to be merged so that this can just be done. It can just go away and people can use it. And even though I know some developers think that adding this basically makes it X11 again for some reason, and I don't really understand why that is the case. I guess they just, why some Wayland developers don't want that to be the case. They don't want it to be X11, so this is like a security problem or something, and so they just don't want to merge it. Really unsure as to why, they don't want to add it, because of it's being similar to X11. That just doesn't really make any sense. This should be added. Case closed, in my opinion. So hopefully this gets worked out. It gets improved. I know the developer, Matthias, if that's how you say your name, has opened up like 3 protocol versions of this, and this is the final one that he thought of, with extra steps of making the window positioning work, but it's like just extra steps for doing it, so it's like more secure in a way. So I don't really know, but hopefully this does get added. Now the next one is about global shortcuts on the Wayland session. This is another hot topic because, well, people need shortcuts. I don't know if Wayland knows this, but this is required. This is needed. People want to use shortcuts in their keyboard in other applications that want to use shortcuts feature. Like this needs to work. Hello? Like, and the thing is, there is a feature for this for the desktop portal. Now, the good thing is that the desktop portal system is pre-installed on basically every single major Linux distro. But many applications don't want to use this, and it's probably because of how it implements it with the desktop environment or something. Probably some developers that are watching this video and probably can comment down below as to why maybe this isn't the best option. And when it comes to, is this supported everywhere, the global shortcuts, it is. KDE Plasma and Gnome do support it, and Hyperland. I know Hyperland supports it as well, even though it's a little bit different of how it's implemented. It's more of a manual way of doing it. The user has to set it up manually. When it comes to Gnome and KDE Plasma, this is supported really well. There's a GUI for it. It's usually in the keyboard shortcut setting right in here, where you can change it. As you can see, GPU Screen Recorder has some keybinds already set up for the global shortcuts, so you can easily save a replay or pause and unpause a recording. It is indeed working properly, but many applications, the 2 that I can think of is OBS Studio and Discord, do not support this yet. And it's going to be really interesting to see, because Discord is going to switch over to Wayland by default in Chromium 140 or Electron version 38. So when they update to Electron version 38, it's going to default to Wayland, and then the shortcuts that were working in Wayland mode when Discord was running an Wayland won't work anymore. And the problem with the Wayland thing is that you can only do the shortcut within the application. You can't click out of the application and then try and do it because it won't work. So it is going to be interesting if Discord is going to go this route for it. And then when it comes to OBS Studio that I know of, requires a big rework for the global shortcuts to be implemented properly, is what I've heard from multiple different merge requests and issues that have been open across GitHub, that it requires a lot of work to get this supported. So it's really, I don't know if OBS is going to go this route, and if they do, it's going to be a while before we actually see OBS support global shortcuts. So this is kind of fixed. There is a solution and applications can use it, but for more complicated applications that have a more advanced wide option for shortcuts in their app, this might require either a big rework or they just won't support it. And there is another type of shortcut protocol that is opened on Wayland, but the problem is that this probably won't be merged because it's more of a system way of doing it than doing it through the portal system, which is more secure. And Wayland likes to really focus on security aspects of their compositor protocols and such. So this probably won't get merged. As you can see, it was opened in 2023. It's most likely not going to be merged. You can see the merge request pipeline was passed, but then the merge got blocked, and we can see the ACKs here haven't been accepted at all. So it's probably not going to happen. Now, a big one that is left for the Wayland session is multi-GPUs on Linux under a Wayland session. Even under X11, sometimes there was some weird quirks with multi-GPUs. So it's not like Wayland was the core problem here. It's more of just an overall aspect of Linux itself, where applications don't know what GPU you, the user, wanted to use. So for example, if you would turn on battery mode, the application wouldn't know that you're on battery mode, and it might select the desktop GPU on your laptop instead of your iGPU to save battery. Basically, there was no way of knowing if an application fully knew what the user wanted the application to use when it came to the different power profiles, etc. And so this is being resolved. So how System 76 and Red Hat hope to finally improve the Linux multi-GPU experience. System 76 engineer Victoria Breckenfeld, if I said that correctly, and Red Hat engineer Sebastian Week presented at the recent XDC 2025 developer conference with their hopes of finally fixing the multi-GPU experience on Linux. As part of this is getting the necessary Wayland protocols in order, as well as a new GPU daemon service for proper multi-GPU handling for the Linux desktop. So you can see a screenshot here. Multi-GPU has a bad reputation on Linux of being slow, an unnecessary power draw, known as being difficult to get working. People expect to have to manually select the GPU to possibly log out / in or even reboot, which is true. Forums are full of random environment variables without a lot of explanation. That is also true. I've tried to do research for fixing issues with people that have multi-GPUs on laptops, and it is a mess trying to figure out how it works properly. And then you have to use environment variables on Steam to make a desktop GPU work properly with the iGPU turned on. It is a mess, I would say. And in various prime utilities and magic solutions exist, few work consistently or provide any actual benefit, which is also true. Some of them do work properly, but a lot of them do not work properly, and that is a big problem. So like I said, there's going to be a daemon, there's going to be a solution that is basically going to tell the application what the user wants to use when it comes to the multi-GPU experience in their computer or laptop, whatever it may be. And so hopefully this finally does get fixed. And I did see on the Cosmic desktop that Victoria showed, where you could basically look at what application was using your desktop GPU or your iGPU, and you could switch it on the fly of like which one you wanted to choose. So that, I thought that was really cool, all in a GUI. So it's definitely going to be fixed in the future, and hopefully it does. Now, one feature that is missing currently on the Wayland session is being able to do custom color. Now, what I mean by this is not the ICC profile. That is a solution that you can do, but it's a bit more manual and a little bit more confusing, I would say, where you have to basically create your own profile of an ICC profile and then use that, and then hopefully it works properly on the monitor. On X11, on like KD Plasma, for example, there was like a gamma section where you could actually increase the saturation, change the different gamma values, and on the Wayland session, that isn't available. So there was a merge request that was open on Kwin in 2021, and it was originally for 5.27, but it hasn't been merged. And basically, down the bottom of here, basically says, hello, is there still interest in revitalizing Gamma KCM on Wayland? And then Xavier Huel, if I said your name correctly, said, yes-ish. As part of a normal output setting, see the Plasma Wayland protocol, which is this one, output device management and support for custom color profiles. So this is going to be added ish. I just don't know exactly how this is going to work. Like down the bottom of here, it says, with this protocol, would it be possible to also adjust brightness, contrast, or saturation? If that's the case, how likely or how much would it take to have something similar upstream in order for it to be easy to implement and manage on either other compositors or authorized clients? So this feature is something that more users would like, and personally I do know that a lot of users like to up the saturation when it comes to playing different games, for example, so then it looks more colorful. This, I would say, is a pretty important feature for the Wayland desktop ecosystem, you could say, even though it's not really an ecosystem currently. It's kind of like scattered everywhere depending on the different desktop environment or tiling manager you use. At least when it comes to KD Plasma, this might be reintroduced where you can customize the saturation or such, and if not, if that isn't the case and they're not going to do this, I would really have a look at trying to do it, because personally I would like to see this feature introduced, because it is something that is available on Windows and a user could jump over and they're like, well, you can't customize the saturation on the Wayland session. Well, either go back to Windows or suck it up, basically. Now, the next one is about getting away from Wayland as much as possible. That seems to be the direction that a lot of toolkits and other applications and frameworks are trying to do, is to try and support Wayland so that applications can then enable Wayland support in their app, and then there's no Wayland server that's running in the background for that particular application. And for Chrome, this was enabled. There was a change to enable the Ozone platform hint to auto. So now it switches to Wayland as default in Chromium 140. Now, what this also means is that in, like I said, with Discord is going to switch over to Electron version 38. And this is based on Chromium 140. And when you switch over to Electron 38, Discord defaults to Wayland. Because right now, Discord is using Wayland still, even though you can do Wayland screen sharing, because that's possible with the desktop portal. I'm running OBS under Wayland right now, and I can use the desktop portal for screen sharing. When they upgrade to Electron 38, then Discord will use Wayland, and then other applications that are also using Electron will use either a newer version of Electron, and it will default to Wayland. Then the other one is about the CEF framework, and this has been open for quite a while now. And when it comes to the development side of this, there hasn't been much that's been changed. Oh, actually, whoa, hold up. Now just checking. There is a new comment here of November 18th. Robbie was added, and it says, hey, has there been any more progress on this? I notice this appears to be sitting fairly idle for a while now. Understandable if you found yourself busy with other projects, which is true. Developers are constantly working on different projects, but this has been sitting here for a while. Robbie is correct. It's been here for a while, and it is needed, I would say, because Steam relies on CEF and OBS Studio relies on the CEF framework. And one of the big problems with OBS is the browser docs do not work under the Wayland session because CEF doesn't support Wayland. So when they have the Wayland session and they tried to bring in the browser docs support, it didn't work. It was invisible, and the windows weren't working properly, and you couldn't like move them, I don't think, either. Just a bunch of random problems, and they had to disable it. That is a big thing for content creators. If you're a live streamer, for example, you're live streaming on Twitch, you need browser docs. It's as simple as that. You need that. That is required. You basically have to open up a bunch of different browser windows to look at your chat or notifications that are happening on your stream when they instead could be supported in the actual OBS application itself. But since CEF doesn't support Wayland, OBS can't bring the browser doc support because of this not being merged yet, supposedly. And then the same goes with Steam. Steam still runs under Wayland, and it also needs this to enable the Wayland support in their application. Now, obviously, Steam does run off an older version of CEF, so it might be a while of when they update to the next version, but Steam also could bring support on their own when it comes to enabling Wayland support in the Steam client. And with Steam running under Wayland and not Wayland, the biggest problem is about the Steam Link or home streaming thing that you can do on the Steam client. When you try to capture your screen with like Steam Big Picture or just the desktop itself, and you try to stream it to another device like a laptop or a mobile phone, it is not able to capture it properly. It can capture some of it, but there is major problems with this. With my experience when using it, it just simply will not work properly. It will have UI problems in the Steam Big Picture. Some games that you try to launch won't appear properly, or they'll appear black. There is a ton of problems when trying to use Steam Link under the Steam app on a Wayland session currently, and this is because it basically doesn't support the desktop portal in any way, and then it also doesn't support the KMS support for capturing on Wayland. That's another way of doing it, and it's why I use Sunshine, because Sunshine actually supports the Wayland session well enough with the KMS capturing that I basically have no issues. I can use Moonlight and then bada bing bada boom, it works perfectly fine. But for the Steam Link, if a normal user decides to switch over to Linux and they have a Wayland session, which most desktops do with the newer distros, and they try to do Steam Link home streaming, they're going to have a bunch of random problems. And it's just going to be like, well, I'm just not going to use it, or I'm going to go back to Windows or something. I would say this is a pretty big issue that needs to be resolved. And basically to resolve it is for them to move to the Wayland client or add Wayland support in the Steam client. And then they need to add either KMS capturing or they need to add the desktop portal capture system. And then this also goes into the Steam VR experience. If you try to do Steam VR on the Steam client on a Wayland session, you cannot see the desktop screen thing when you're in Steam VR. They have a desktop button that you can click to view your desktop. It's a black screen. It won't work because there's no desktop portal support, there's no KMS capturing support. So basically, it's just a black screen. And the only way that Steam could really support this properly is through those options and enabling the Steam client through Wayland, but transitioning over to Wayland with the CEF. But again, CEF needs to support Wayland first, and this seems to be just like what the person said down here. It's basically, what Robbie said, it's just sitting here idle, nothing's really happening. Hopefully something does happen though, and these issues can be resolved. Now, one of the other things that are supported in the Wayland desktop currently on two desktops, which is KD Plasma and Gnome. Gnome not supporting everything with HDR yet, and then KD Plasma basically is trying to support everything, which they basically support everything now, I think, with the color management protocol, because the color management protocol is basically done in the Wayland protocol stuff. That's done. But when it comes to the desktop environments, like Gnome for example, they don't support everything yet. Like on the Gnome HDR support and Mutter merge request, we can see on phase 1 here, not everything is merged, like adding HDR10 mode support, which is what I need for my monitor. My monitor does HDR10, Gnome doesn't support it, and when I tried Gnome out when HDR was added, it didn't look correct at all. It was very, I think, washed out if I remember correctly, or was like too dark. Did not look good at all, and certain colors didn't look correct if I remember correctly as well. So you can see there's a lot of things that they haven't done yet. And then we look at phase 2, there's the tone mapping support for PQ to SDR, the color space conversions from Rec 2020 to sRGB, the signal mapping from sRGB to PQ, and then the DRM tone and gamut mappings transformation for full screen surfaces. And then phase 3, which is other color spaces, and then allow metadata pass through for non-full screen surfaces, and then some feedback. So you can see there's a lot of things that are needed for GNOME HDR, but for KD Plasma, it's basically there. They've supported most things. I know that in Plasma 6.6, which currently we're on 6.5, so a couple of months away, in 6.6, they are going to add an extra option for luminance in the calibration HDR brightness settings. If we do show this here, we can see it goes through like different options. There's going to be a luminous option that you can use to configure it even further. Then when it comes to application support, Chrome does support HDR out of the box, surprisingly. I was honestly really surprised that Chrome supported, which I guess that does make sense because Chromium is open source, so HDR support has been added in Chrome. We can have a look here. I have HDR enabled. We play in a HDR LG OLED video, and we can see that there is a HDR option here. We do the 4K one, and yeah, we can see here that it is indeed working. Internet is a little bit slow, but you can see, yeah, it's working. It looks like HDR10 on my monitor, which is around 400 nits my monitor gets to, so it's not that bright looking, and yeah, looks good. You guys won't be able to see the HDR though, because it will be in like sRGB or something, a different color profile, but you can see that, yep, HDR is working in YouTube. It is working properly. And then when it comes to Firefox, originally HDR was development was like on a roll basically, and it was almost there. Currently, it has been put back into an experimental option. So basically you need to go into the about config in the browser and enable a toggle, and that causes some bugs to appear when you try to play YouTube HDR videos with HDR enabled. So it is currently not ready on Firefox, but there is a bug report open and it's full of development that they're going through to try and get it working. So I would say in a couple months from now, HDR on Firefox will be ready. And then when it comes to HDR on MPV, that has also been supported. So if you want to play local HDR videos, you can do it within the MPV video player. When it comes to VLC or other video players that don't use the MPV backend, I am unsure of when they'll add HDR support. So as we can see here, we have, let's say, the Sony one. This is HDR10 supposedly. We need to open up in the actual MPV media player. And as we can see here, it is indeed working. We just mute this here. Everything does look really bright, I would say, and nice and colorful. Doesn't look washed out at all. Looks very nice. Now, if we do the eye information here, it should show that we are using BT 2020, which I'm pretty sure is a HDR thing that is there. And then there's the HDR10, which is working as well, I think. Even though it's showing 0, I'm pretty sure it is working because it does look really bright and colorful. But yeah, basically when it comes to application support, it is coming along. Chrome supports it, MPV supports it. Things maybe like Stremio, for example, will probably add it in the future because they use these backends anyway. So yeah, HDR is pretty good. And then I also did forget to talk about Wayland with HDR. So we guess we can show that off. Like I said before, with Nvidia on HDR, the driver needs to be improved so you don't have to use another environment variable, which is the WSI environment variable. But on AMD, all you need to do is enable the Wayland driver, as this isn't enabled by default yet, and then you can utilize it with a custom Proton runner that allows the Wayland driver. So, like I said, you do need to use the GE Proton Runner or the CachyOS Proton Runner and force compatibility, and then we need to do proton underscore enable underscore Wayland equals 1 and proton underscore enable underscore HDR equals 1 %command% with a space on each one so that it can be executed properly. And if we go into here, into Overwatch 2 for example, we can see that we can enable HDR. If we do apply here, a restart is required to apply some settings. So if we do restart it, we should apply and then exit the desktop. And now that we've reopened up the game, we can go to settings here and options, and we can see that HDR is now turned on. And I did adjust the calibration because, oh my lord, it was really bright. If we reset the default here, we can see what it originally looked like. The orange is completely gone. But if we do shoot this back down here, we do until it's barely visible. Yeah, HDR does look pretty okay. Personally, I think sRGB looks better on my monitor. This is this HDR10 that it's trying to do with like 400 nits. Doesn't look that great, in my opinion. But again, this is how you get HDR working under the custom Proton runner, enabling the Wayland driver, and also enabling the HDR support within the Wayland driver so that you can indeed use it on all types of different games. And of course, at some point, when the Wayland driver gets enabled by default, then Proton enables Wayland as well in the default Proton runner, not the custom Proton runners. Then, and then HDR also gets enabled by default within the Wayland driver. You won't need to use these environment variables anymore, and HDR will just work when it comes to playing games. And I think the last thing that would need to be supported on Wayland when it comes to different applications enabling Wayland support is to do with overlay support. So let's say, for example, GPU screen recorder. I decided to use GPU screen recorder on the Cosmic desktop, and it was having some problems under it. As you can see here, when I launched the overlay, it was black in the background. When I launch it right now, as you can see, it's see-through, and it's because Cosmic doesn't support something properly with it running under Wayland. And we had a little conversation here with the GPU screen recorder developer, which I don't know how he found the issue so damn quickly. He must have been just browsing issues on Cosmic or something and saw it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he's running a different script or something that like gets notified of someone mentioning GPU screen recorder. I really don't know, but there was a conversation about this with the lead Cosmic comp developer, Victoria, and they had a conversation, and basically what is required is the layer shell protocol support. In the layer shell protocol support, which allows for a surface to be displayed on top of like another surface, is basically how it works. Probably saying it wrong. Some developers can correct me if I'm not saying it correctly, but if we do scroll down here, it always shows what desktop environments or tiling managers support this protocol. We can see that Gnome does not support the layer shell protocol, and this is required, let's say, if GPU screen recorder, because GPU screen recorder runs under Wayland, if it wanted to run under Wayland, it would need to use the layer shell, and the layer shell does not work on Gnome, and it doesn't work on the Cinnamon desktop either. Only KWin supports it, Cosmic supports it, Hyperland supports it. It's basically another situation where, you know, Gnome doesn't support something where the other ones do, and then basically what needs to happen is probably either Gnome needs to support it or it's going to be left behind when it comes to that feature. So when it comes to GPU screen recorder, or when it comes to the Steam overlay, if Steam wanted to support the overlay on the Wayland session when they go on to Wayland on the Steam client, they would need to support the layer shell as well. So I think the conclusion with basically all the things that I have written down here is that most things will be finished probably this year. And I feel like with the likes of the Steam machine that is happening, that will be releasing next year, early 2026 by Valve, these features need to be finished, I would say. They need to be completed. I think at some point, some developer will come along, either is contracted to do it, or someone who really cares about that feature to be supported. Or when it comes to Discord, I feel like they'll support the global shortcuts. Or when it comes to the session management stuff, I think that will be figured out at some point. Maybe not. I don't really know. It just all depends on the Wayland developers. But I think the Wayland desktop right now, when it comes to KD Plasma and Gnome, and Cosmic is also, it is in a pretty good spot. It's basically better than it ever has been, since everyone is basically moving to the Wayland session as the default session for the user to log into. And I think the biggest problem with Wayland is that there needs to be an understanding of what a desktop environment is for Wayland, because right now, as I just shown, the layer shell isn't supported in Gnome. When it comes to server-side decorations, Gnome doesn't support that either. I think there needs to be a standard for what is a desktop environment, so that desktop environments that get created or already exist, like Gnome or KD Plasma or Cosmic or Cinnamon with the Wayland session, they need to support these protocols so that it is considered a desktop environment, so that everything is on the same page and no one leaves out certain protocols that app developers need to support their app on the Linux desktop. Because right now that is kind of the case where an application's like, oh, I'm going to support Wayland, and then they're like, well, you need to support the desktop environment that supports the most amount of protocols, and Gnome isn't one of them. And there are some others out there, and like Cosmic as well. Even though Cosmic is in development, they don't support some of the most important protocols, and they will in the future. But it's just another common case on the Wayland desktop where it's not unified. Not every desktop supports all the protocols, and some of that is okay. It's supposed to be like where the developer can create the protocols that they want on their desktop for their users for that use case, and that's perfectly okay. But I think for the major desktop environments like KD Plasma and Gnome, they need to be on common grounds when it comes to protocol support, and feature support should be the same, so that the user comes across, they're not confused as to why something is broken on Gnome, but then it's not broken on KD Plasma, or it's broken on KD Plasma and it's not broken on Gnome. I feel like that needs to be the biggest problem that needs to be fixed. So I'd like to know your thoughts about what is left with Wayland. If I left anything out, definitely comment down below. This video is an hour and 26 minutes long, unedited, so that is a lot of me talking, and I'm losing my voice right now, so I appreciate it if you've made it this far to me, of me ranting about what is left with Wayland. We'll see next year on this date if Wayland is ready, part 4, and we'll see if any of this stuff has been resolved. If you appreciate me making this video, definitely give it a like, definitely subscribe to the channel, and thank you to my supporters. I'll show a text across the screen. Thank you, money every single day month. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.